the quality of the content I'm going to talk about in this video is wildly inconsistent. Hi everyone, my name's Chloe, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being here today. Today is day number 14 of BOOKMAS. BOOKMAS is basically where I'm going to be posting a new video every day up to and including Christmas Day. We have about 10 days left. I don't know how we've got this far into the month, but here we are. And basically now because we're on the home stretch, I'm going to be talking a lot about things that reflect on the past year, and I'm starting that off with adaptations. So, I love to read, obviously. I have a booktube channel. Why would I do this if I did not love to read? But I always say that I generally just love stories. I love storytelling in any format. I love books. I love theatre. I've talked about theatre enough. You should probably also know that if you've watched my channel before at all. I also love film and TV. I love music. Anything where there is a story being told, I am here for it. So I thought, what better thing to talk about than adaptations? So taking a book and making it into a film or TV programme, it's perfect for me who just loves all things sort of storytelling in any format that it can come in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through some of the 2021 book to movie or TV adaptations that I have watched. Every single one of these on this list, I have watched the adaptation. I haven't read every one of the books, but that's also a discussion as to whether or not I even want to read the books after watching the adaptation. But then I also do have a list of some upcoming 2022 adaptations that are all based on books that I either have already read or I'm definitely planning on reading before the adaptation comes out. So, I think that is enough of a rambly intro. Let's just get on to talking about some adaptations this year and giving you some of my quick thoughts about them all. So I was trying to figure out what order to talk about these, and I thought I should probably start with the one where I haven't actually read the book, because that's going to be the one that's going to be hardest for me to have sort of discussions on whether or not it's a good adaptation. And the only one of these I actually haven't read the book is Dune. So this one came out a couple of months ago. It's sort of a sci-fi epic. There's a lot of politics involved. It's basically about when sort of a new family and group of people move onto this planet because they want to harvest something called spice, which they use to sort of power their transportation, but the people who live on the planet use it for various other reasons as well. And to be honest, I can't really give you too much of a synopsis of this because it is a lot of setup and I can't really tell you what's happening because not really that much. I mean, stuff did happen. There was a fairly sort of big event in the middle of it, but it did just feel like a lot of it was set up, because if you've seen the trailer for this, you'll know that this film features Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya, and they're the people that are very, very much focused on in the trailer. Timothée Chalamet is in it a lot. Zendaya, not so much. Another sort of main plot line of this is that Paul, the main character played by Timothée Chalamet, there's some sort of prophecy going on to do with him when he gets to this planet, and he is also having visions of Zendaya's character and of sort of things that are going to happen in the future, and that's all you really get of her throughout it. You get flashes of her until the very end when her character is properly introduced on screen. And basically, from what I can tell, most of the action is in the second half, because this is one book that has been split up into two films, and it seems like everything in the first part is just a massive prequel setting up for the action of the second part. Now, I obviously can't say whether or not this is a good adaptation of the book because I haven't read the book, but the question, I suppose, is, do I want to read the book after having seen the film? And actually, yeah, kind of. I feel like it was the kind of story that was quite slow, but it could work really well in a book format. And I'm actually intrigued to read it now. So I might be picking that up sometime next year. I've got no idea if I'll actually enjoy it. It might, or if I'll actually even follow through and pick it up. But we'll see what happens, I suppose. Okay, so now we're going to move on to ones I have actually read and seen the adaptation. And we'll start with one that I do not have the book with me because I didn't actually enjoy the book, and that is There's Someone Inside Your House by Stephanie Perkins. So I actually watched this one this week. Actually, the next two that I'm about to talk about, I watched this week in sort of preparation for this video. Now, There's Someone Inside Your House I read when it very first came out. I had previously read Stephanie Perkins' other series, the Anna and the French Kiss series, and I really enjoyed it at the time. I have said since that I'm not sure if it's something I'll enjoy reading now, but I did enjoy it at the time. So I read There's Someone Inside Your House, and I didn't love it. I don't know if there was necessarily anything wrong with it, or if it's just the fact that I'm not a massive sort of horror thriller fan, because that's essentially what it is. It's a teen slasher book. It's about this girl who moves to a new town, and then students at the high school start sort of getting killed off, and it's all to do with sort of like secrets being revealed as well. She has this sort of dark secret in her past that she's constantly trying to hide throughout it as well. She also starts a relationship with this guy as well, so that's a big part of it. There's a lot going on, but my issue with the book is that the killer was revealed to the reader fairly early on. It was about halfway through the book, and that just kind of took the suspense away for me. And to be honest, I can't really remember too much else about it. I just remember not particularly loving it. I think I gave it like 2 stars, but I still wanted to watch the adaptation because I thought it might work better as a film than as a book. Whilst I still don't watch many horror films, there are some that I really enjoy, whereas I have yet to find a horror book that I've really enjoyed, so I thought maybe it'd work better. And I think there were parts of it that worked better. They changed some of the stuff with the timeline, like the McCartney, the main character, hadn't just moved to town. She'd actually been there for like a year, which I think made it a bit more likely that she would sort of be quite involved in the story, because in the book it just seemed a bit strange that obviously she'd be scared of people getting killed off in the town, but it seems slightly strange that we were following her and almost like going through her to investigate it when she didn't really have a connection to any of these people. Whereas in the Netflix film, she obviously had sort of grown relationships, so it made more sense. I also, again, like I said, can't remember the specifics, but I know that the way that the killer is revealed is very different in this, because it was actually like the climactic scene, so the pacing was better. I still didn't love it, still didn't enjoy it. I just got a little bit bored, and still actually, although it made more sense why McCartney would be concerned with it, it still kind of didn't really make sense why you were following her throughout it. It seemed like there'd have been other characters that would have made more sense as a central character. It was okay. I will never watch it again. I have one more adaptation that I didn't like, and to be honest, I'm actively angry at this one because I only watched it last night. And the thing is I knew it was going to be bad. I knew it wasn't going to be a good adaptation because it had so many setbacks. It was supposed to come out in 2019, and it got delayed because there had to be reshoots because it did not test well, and the 2 actors that were in it were difficult to pin down for the reshoots, so it got delayed. And then obviously it was supposed to come out in 2020, but then things happened, and then it was supposed to come out at the cinema, but then it quietly got released on Amazon Prime, and I have been putting off watching it because I love this book. And within 5 minutes of turning this film on yesterday, I hated it. And I'm really angry because I really love a lot of the cast in it as well. But anyway, I watched Chaos Walking, which is an adaptation of The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. Patrick Ness is one of my favourite authors. I don't think I've spoke about him much on this channel, but he is one of my favourite authors. I've read every YA book that he has ever written and met him at a signing, and he was a lovely person, and I really, really love his books. And I've seen other adaptations of his. A Monster Calls. I've seen the play, I've seen the film. Both are some of my favourite adaptations of books ever, and this just did not work. The thing is I knew it probably wouldn't work, because basically this is set in a dystopian world where there are only men. For some reason there are no women. Something happened and they all died out years ago, but you don't know why at the start of this book anyway. And all of the men have this thing called the noise, which is basically where you can hear their thoughts. Constantly you are hearing each other's thoughts throughout the day, so it is like this just noise that is constant in the background all the time. And it's about the story of Todd, who one day stumbles across a crash site in the woods and finds within it a girl, and it's the first girl that he's ever seen, and she doesn't have noise, and it's everything that happens after that. And the thing is that it was always going to be difficult to pull this off on screen, because the noise in particular works quite well in here, because I was going to see if I can find an example of it. The noise works really well on page, because when it gets really overwhelming, it's literally like this. Like, you can't sort of differentiate it. You could just pick out certain phrases. And then when they actually want you to pick out something in particular, it's still in that sort of handwriting, but it's like an actual sentence you can pick out. You had those sort of pages throughout, and it just worked. One of my big problems with it is that portray it in the film, they obviously had to differentiate something between when they're actually talking and when you're hearing the noise, and you had to see it in a visual way. So they had these sort of like weird clouds going around their head constantly whenever the noise was happening, but also like the noise was used in a different way, and they could use it in like a visual way and almost actually fight people with it, which was very strange as well. And it was just, I don't know, it felt like the film tried to have like a wrapped up ending to it, but this is a 3-book series, and so where it went was different from the book anyway, and not in a good way. I'm well aware that things have to change for an adaptation, but in this way it just didn't work. It felt like they were just trying to cram too much into one film. I'm going to try and say this without spoilers, but if you have read this book, if I say the word Manchi to you, you know what I'm talking about. You know about the particular moment that breaks you in this book. And I watched that moment happen on the film, and like, obviously not happy about it, but the actual sort of like emotional heart of this book was just taken away from it. Partly because of the way that they actually handled Manchi's character and the noise or lack thereof, as was the case in the film. And yeah, it just felt like the sort of emotional heart of this was gone a lot, and I just didn't care about the characters. And yeah, can you tell I'm angry about it? I actually ended up like dozing off towards the end of it because I was just like, yeah, I'm not interested. Anyway, let's move on to happier things, shall we? Let's talk about some adaptations that I actually enjoyed. I'm going to first talk about one that is a sort of very loose adaptation because technically it's a spin-off, but I felt like I still needed to mention it because it is one of my favourite adaptations, and this is a third thing in this sort of series of adaptations, and it's still one of my favourite things, and that is season 2 of Love, Victor, which is a spin-off of the film adaptation of Simon vs. Homo Sapiens Agenda. So yeah, you've got Love, Simon, which was a film that came out a few years ago, which is my comfort film. I watch it on repeat whenever I just need to cheer up. We then have the first season of Love, Victor, which came out last year, and this year we got the second season of Love, Victor. And basically Simon vs. Homo Sapiens Agenda, or Love, Simon, was about this gay character who's not out to anybody in his sort of real life, but he is having this online relationship with a character who is only known as Blue. They don't know each other at all, but they're sending emails back and forth, and then one day somebody ends up getting a hold of his emails and blackmails him and threatens to out him to everybody, basically. And I've talked about this before, this is one of my favourite books. As I said, I really love the film adaptation. Love, Victor kind of follows on. It's set in the same towns, so it's also set at Creekwood High, and it's about a new character called Victor who has moved to the school sort of the year after Simon graduates, and he's also struggling with his sexuality at the start of the series. And it's to do with sort of his family, because he comes from a Latinx family, and it's also to do with sort of the religious aspect of it as well. And it's just about him struggling with his sexuality. And he ends up, when he gets to school, hearing about Simon and what happened to him the year before. So he ends up reaching out to Simon for help, and he kind of becomes his mentor. So it's him sort of sending letters to Simon as his own sort of love life is developing. So season 1 of Love, Victor was originally picked up by Disney Plus, and they decided not to air it because it wasn't the family-friendly content that they wanted. I'm not going to comment on that right now, but basically it ended up going onto Hulu instead, in the US anyway, which is also owned by Disney, but it is more of an adult streaming service. In the UK it is actually on Disney Plus, but on their Star section, which is basically our version of Hulu. And the first series was filmed with the Disney Plus audience in mind, so it was a little bit more sort of toned down. The second series got to sort of delve into things a little bit more, got to go a little bit further into these characters' lives, and it also got to sort of not hold back so much. So I actually really enjoyed the second series because I felt like it just gave me that little bit more from the characters that I really wanted. And yeah, I really love Victor. I think I said this was going to be a quick thing to talk about, but I probably rambled about it for a while because it's one of my favourite TV shows that is on at the minute, and I'm very happy that it's been picked up for a season 3, so I will see that one hopefully next year. Next up we have the final adaptation in the To All the Boys series. So this one was To All the Boys, Always and Forever, Lara Jean. So this is the last book in the trilogy. It was the last film in the trilogy, and I can't give you too much of a synopsis about it because it'll be spoilers for the first one. But essentially the first one was about Lara Jean, who writes letters to people when she has crushes on them. She's done this throughout her life and she's always saved the letters, and then one day someone ends up mailing these letters out. So all these people who she may have had a crush on when she was like 10 years old have received a letter from that time telling them how much she loves them. And one of those boys happens to be her sister's boyfriend, and one of the other boys that receives the letter is someone called Peter. And basically to try and avoid the sister's boyfriend Josh, she ends up doing like a fake dating situation with Peter, and you can imagine that things kind of lead on from there. So this is the third one. Like I said, I love the book of this one in particular because it is set a little bit after the first two books. There's not as much of a time jump in the films, but in the books there is a fair amount of time between the second and the third, and Lara Jean is more of a grown-up character in this. It's all about her sort of considering where she's going to college and the fact that she might have to leave her family and also her boyfriend behind. And I really loved where they sort of took this book. It was a nice ending but without being unrealistic as well, and I really enjoyed this book, and I really enjoyed the film as well. There's definitely changes in it, but it keeps the essence of the story, and I just really love all three of these films. I just love how cute they are. It's just a perfect film to put on when you just want something happy and fun to watch. And yeah, there's not really much else to say. Like I said, I have loved all three, so I'm very happy with it. I now have the full sort of set to watch. I can watch the entire story all in one go if I wanted to. And then the last adaptation to talk about that came out this year feels like it came out ages ago, but that is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. So the first series of the Netflix adaptation came out this year. This one was a TV series, and I love Leigh Bardugo. I have my Leigh Bardugo shelf behind me. She is, again, one of my favourite authors, and I was terrified of this adaptation because of a couple of things, actually. The first one being that Shadow and Bone I just don't love as much as Six of Crows. I read Six of Crows first, and then when I went back and read Shadow and Bone, I did enjoy it, but I'm more connected to the Six of Crows characters. So I wasn't sure how I would feel about the adaptation of this story and whether I'd just be waiting to get to the Six of Crows part. Also, the crows are actually in this. They've been added into the adaptation, and I wasn't sure how that would work as well, because you are having to change their storyline, essentially, because you're sort of adding them into events that they weren't actually in, and that will inevitably change how Six of Crows is handled later on. And I was panicked about it. I loved this series so much. I do need to reread this book series, I think, because I actually think that I might like it more on a reread, because the things that I loved about this, like I really loved Alina as a character, and I don't remember liking Alina in the book too much. Like, I didn't dislike her, but I didn't love her either. And as much as I think that Jessie, who plays Alina, was fantastic, I do also think that some of that is just from Alina as character, and I might just be misremembering her. So I do want to reread this. I actually, in the books, I don't particularly like Mal and Alina, but I don't mind them in the TV show. I don't know if that's just sort of me misremembering the books and I would think differently on a reread, or if it is just to do with the actors. I liked the changes they made to the Darkling, because I never particularly got the obsession people had with the Darkling in the book series, but I really loved how Ben Barnes played it, and I also really loved how they brought the Six of Crows gang into it, because even though they weren't supposed to be involved in this part of the story, they very quickly became my favourite parts of it, because the casting in this series is so good, and I'm really excited to see what happens with sort of adapting the second two in the Shadow and Bone series and then getting on to the actual storyline of Six of Crows, because it's got the potential to be so good. And I really need to know who they're going to cast for Nikolai, because the casting's been so good so far, and Nikolai is my favourite, so I need to see what happens. I'm very excited, can you tell? Okay, I've been recording this video a lot longer than I thought I would, so let's move on. But the next part should be quicker, because now we're going to talk about adaptations that I haven't actually seen yet. So let's just talk about some adaptations that are coming out. They are mostly 2022, but I do have one, I believe, right at the beginning that is a 2021 release, but it's end of the year, so that's why I'm going to include it in this. So I'll talk about that one first. That is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This is an adult romance one that is all about two sort of rivals in the workplace, and I read this one a couple of years ago and I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to see how the adaptation goes. It's got Lucy Hale in it, who I do like, so fingers crossed this is a good adaptation. This is basically just me giving you a rundown of ones I'm excited for, by the way, because like I said, I can't really have thoughts about them other than casting, I suppose. Next up, we apparently are getting the adaptation of Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Now, I haven't read this one yet. I've had this one for years and I've wanted to read it. It's about, funnily enough, it's actually about a pandemic and a virus, but it's about a band of performers who go around sort of the settlements after the pandemic has happened performing Shakespeare. And I do want to read this before the adaptation comes out, but I'm also like, with the timing of everything, I'm just slightly like, do I want to read it? Do I want to watch the adaptation? Obviously, I don't think they planned for it to come out when an actual pandemic had happened, but maybe it'll actually spur me on to finally read this because I've had this for actual years now. By the way, when I say apparently getting, it's because I just looked up what adaptations are coming out for this video, and some of them I knew about and some of them I was like, oh, I didn't know that was happening. One of which is apparently we're getting a new adaptation of Persuasion by Jane Austen, which I'm very happy about because I love Persuasion. Persuasion is actually my favourite Jane Austen book. So this is about a character called Anne Elliot, and she was engaged to a character called Frederick Wentworth until her family got involved because they didn't think he was good enough for her because he's like a naval captain. So they got involved and put a stop to the wedding, and it is sort of 8 years later and their paths cross again, and Captain Wentworth is at a very different situation in his life and maybe could be accepted by Anne's family now, but is he still interested? What's going to happen? It's Jane Austen, it's a love story, we can probably guess what's going to happen. A lot of miscommunication, but then eventually a happy ending. I really love this book. I haven't read it in years, so I am planning on doing a reread of it. I also realised that I really need a nicer copy of this because this is not great. This is just a copy that I bought years ago when I first read it. I mean, you can tell how long ago it was because it cost me $4.99. Books do not cost $4.99 anymore. But yeah, I'm hoping to reread this, and I'm hoping that the adaptation is fantastic because I love this book. And we've had some really good adaptations of classics. Like, there's 2 versions of Pride and Prejudice that are equally amazing. We've got the Colin Firth miniseries and we've got the Keira Knightley film, and I love them both. We also have Little Women, which I rewatched the other day, the newer Greta Gerwig one. So if we can have a really good adaptation of Persuasion, that would be fantastic. I've just realised actually I haven't given it any dates for these. So apparently Station 11 is going to be a miniseries that is actually premiering on the 16th of December this year, but obviously that's going to then run into the beginning of next year. It's going to be on HBO Max in the US. I don't know how we're getting it over here, but I'm assuming some sort of channel will pick it up. Persuasion is going to be a Netflix movie that is expected out at some point in 2022. Speaking of Netflix, we also have an adaptation of a short story from V. Schwab, which is First Kill. So the book that this is in is Vampires Never Get Old. All I know about this story is that it's vampires, it's queer, it's about a vampire slayer and a vampire falling in love. It's female. I'm very excited about it. I love V. Schwab. I should have read this book during spooky season and I just never got around to it, but I do plan on at least reading that short story before the TV show comes out. We don't have a date for it yet. I mean, it might not even come out till next year in spooky season. They might end up saving it for that, but it is coming on Netflix. They have filmed it now, so I'm very excited for this one. I've realised, by the way, that I've completely gone out of order because I just got excited talking about things. I was originally going to talk about the ones that I haven't read yet, so that should have been Station 11, Vampires Never Get Old, and then I do have, I think, 2 more to talk about from that category, but I just got excited looking at my pile of books, so I picked up Persuasion. So we'll loop back around to the ones that I have actually read, but first let's talk about the 2 more that I haven't read yet. So first up we have Conversations with Friends, which is a book that is originally by Sally Rooney, who wrote Normal People. I have not watched the Normal People TV adaptation. I've seen bits of it and I just wasn't particularly interested in it. I don't know why. But I am interested in Conversations with Friends. I don't know why. I just seem to gravitate more towards this one than Normal People. All I really know is that it's about relationships between these 4 main characters. I don't know too much else. I know Joe Alwyn is in it, and that's about all I know. I believe this one is going to be on BBC 3 in the UK, and we do not have a date for it yet, but I am excited to watch it. I may actually get around to watching Normal People. I think I'm more likely to read this book, whereas I've never particularly had an interest in reading Normal People, so maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll actually read this book and watch the adaptation and then maybe get around to reading her other works afterwards. We then have the adaptation of Where the Crawdads Sing, which I always see this one in shops and I've never bought it even though I look at it loads. And I didn't realise until I was looking this up that it says that it's a story that follows two timelines that slowly intertwine, which is one of my favourite things in books, so maybe I do have to read this one. But it says the first timeline describes the life and adventures of a young girl named Kaya as she grows up in the isolated marsh of North Carolina from 1952 to 1969, and the second timeline follows a murder investigation of Chase Andrews, a local celebrity of Barkley Cove, a fictional coastal town of North Carolina. Which does sound intriguing. I do like to read books before the film or TV show comes out if I can, so I may have to try and pick this one up soon. It's due out in June, so I've got plenty of time to read it, but this one is going to be a film. It's one that I have got my eye on and I am excited for, even though I don't know too much about it. Now let's move on to some that I do know a little bit more about, because the last two I have to talk about are actually two of my favourite books, and they've both been made into TV shows in the next year, or actually I think they've both already been filmed, but we're just waiting for releases. The first one being Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this is all about a band from the 70s, and it's all told in the book in like an interview format, and it's just about their sort of tumultuous history. They were sort of at the height of the fame and then suddenly they broke up, and it's a story of why. It's very much Fleetwood Mac type vibes. It reminds me of the film Almost Famous as well. I love this book so much, and it's becoming a TV show. Riley Keough playing Daisy Jones, and it's got Sam Claflin in it as well, and I'm really excited for this one. I again do not know the date of when it is due out because I don't think they've actually announced it at all yet, but I believe it has been filmed now and it's going to be on Amazon Prime, I think, so I'm really excited for whenever this one gets released. And I have one more to talk about that is becoming a TV show, and if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll probably know that I love this series, and you can probably guess that I would be very excited for the TV show to come out because they're doing an adaptation of Heartstopper, and I'm so happy about it. And the casting for this, like if you look at the picture that Alice Oseman put up of when they sort of announced the cast, they look like the drawings, and I love it so much. This is the story of Charlie and Nick, who are two boys who meet at school and fall in love. Charlie's gay, he's out at school. Nick is questioning his sexuality, and it's when he meets Charlie that he kind of starts to figure all that out. And it's just an adorable love story that also deals with some heavier topics. It goes into talk on mental health and eating disorders in particular, and I love this graphic novel series so much. And it's going to be a TV show, and Alice Oseman was heavily involved in the TV show as well. She was one of the writers, so I think it could be a really good adaptation, and I'm so much looking forward to it coming out. So of course this one had to end the video. Let's end it on a high note. We don't have a date for it yet. We know they've filmed it. We've seen many pictures from behind the scenes, but we've not seen any footage of it yet. That's the thing. All of these adaptations that are coming out next year, I haven't watched trailers for any of them yet, even the ones that already have trailers, but I am still very excited for them to come out. So I think this has been a bit of a rambly video, but this is what happens when you give me sort of two things that I like to talk about. I just want to talk forever. This is going to be a nightmare to edit, but thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff down below. Let me know what your favourite adaptations of last year were and which ones you're looking forward to coming out next year as well. And I will see you guys tomorrow with a new video. Bye!